As the Cincinnati Bengals returned to practice on Wednesday, the intensity ratcheted up and the offense bounced back. Let's break it down.
You are Locked On Bengals, your daily Cincinnati Bengals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What up, Bengals fans, and welcome to another episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. I'm your host, Jake Lisco. He's your host, James Rapine. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network here on Locked On Bengals, covering your team every day. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere you get your podcast. So if you're new and you want to stay up to date on all things Bengals as they move through this training camp and preseason, now's the perfect time to subscribe and join the many Bengals fans out there who are already making us their first listen, who are already everyday listeners, and shout out to all the regulars out there. We've got a very intense and very packed practice to discuss today. A couple of move the ball drills, unscripted move the ball work today, and the intensity between the offense and the defense ramped up as the intensity did in this practice. This episode of Locked On Bengals is sponsored by LinkedIn. You can post your job for free today at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. Terms and conditions apply. And James, there were some fights.
See, you're being dramatic. There were no fights. Here, you know, the funniest thing about this is all of these people freaking out and being dramatic because there were a couple scuffles. And I don't actually mean Jake, but a lot of, and I made fun of them to their faces. So my colleagues certainly had never been on the playground at recess, because some of the trash talk that was said during these scuffles was stuff I probably said at 10 years old, which may say a lot about me, or it just says a lot about the Bengals and the fact that they need to hit someone else. There were scuffles today. Logan Wilson and Ted Karras starting things off. There was intensity. And honestly, good, because no one got hurt. They were going at it. They were making each other better. They were talking trash, and it felt like you'd expect training camp to feel, especially when there's another team coming into town in 72 hours or so to play the Cincinnati Bengals. And I know it's preseason, fine, but a lot of these guys are still going to play. And so to have the intensity ratchet up a notch or two or seven, you want that to happen. And as you mentioned, the offense, they handled their own. Joe Burrow, calm, cool, and collected in these situations. And we saw that today, a lot to break down, but number 9 certainly stands out. Outside of the scuffling, which we can break down more of. Oh my God, can you believe it? The humanity. Outside of that, Joe Burrow looked good.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of the standouts of this practice. Joe Burrow was definitely one of them. Tee Higgins, another one. We'll get to those guys just to break down kind of how the scuffles ensued, the chronology of events. First, it was Charlie Jones on a jet sweep. He took a full-on tackle. I believe it was Jermaine Pratt on the defensive side delivering the hit.
Wrong. You're already wrong.
Who was it?
It was Logan Wilson and Ted.
That came later. I'm starting from the beginning.
No. You're out of order right now. I promise. Logan and Ted was the start of it. Jermaine was down the field after that. This is what's fun. We're going off the cuff here. Because that was
because I could have sworn that
was on the far side. The first scuffle was Logan hit Ted in the helmet when Ted was on the ground because Ted finished a block. And then that led to those guys getting into it. And then there was another scuffle that involved Jermaine Pratt. And basically Jermaine hit Charlie Jones really hard, took him to the ground. And there you go. So there we go. Off script a little bit. There we go.
The first fight was, as James described, Ted Karras finishes a block on Logan Wilson. Logan Wilson takes exception. And the other interior offensive linemen, Cordell Volson and Alex Kappa, watch Logan Wilson take exception. They run over. Logan Wilson gets leveled in the process. And I don't know if that was even intentional or if they were just going over to try to kind of break things up. But as it turns out, it was a leveling of Logan Wilson, and then things ensued from there with many players on the offensive side and defensive side involved. You're right. After that, the next drive, Jermaine Pratt laid out Charlie Jones on the jet sweep. And then after that, Ted Karras took further exception to another hit, this time on Andre Yosevich, on a throw over the middle, kind of a high-low bang bang from Jermaine Pratt, then Von Bell. Again, this is a very reactionary moment. I wouldn't say that there's anything malicious about it, but as Ted Karras pointed out in the locker room after practice, it's not a tackle period. They're not live. And when the offense watches their players take a couple of hits, things will heat up, expletives will fly. But that is the nature of training camp, especially at this point when we're getting right up to that first preseason game and it's time for them to hit another team.
I love it. I love it. You need this. You really do. And like I said, no one got hurt. There weren't really punches thrown or anything like that.
They're talking about Guardian caps anyway. You slap the Guardian cap, you got an extra padding there.
We're talking about scuffles, and they were quickly broken up, and guys are mad. And you should be mad because the offense was marching down the field, and when the defense was getting stops, I'm sure the offense got frustrated. And I think that's the beauty of today's practice is Jermaine Pratt. We're talking about a big hit on the ball, preventing a play from Charlie Jones. We're talking about Von Bell popping Andre Yosebash and making sure he did not catch that ball. Like, there was football acts there that mattered. Ted Karras finishing a block, which all of those things do need to happen when it matters. And so having the little scuffles, having guys take up for each other, that's good. And so when you're talking about a couple scuffles, guys care, they're intense, and the practice in general was by far the most intense, which was good because it was about 10 degrees cooler, I would say, than the most recent practices that we've had here. So the guys, they were able to go a little bit, I don't want to say harder, but the intensity was okay because it matched. It was a good time to be that intense considering the temperature dropped a little bit.
Yeah, we had a couple of move the ball periods, like I mentioned, one of them a little bit shorter, one of them a little bit longer. I believe there were three drives from the first team.
Yep.
2 in the second period, 1 in the first period. They scored touchdowns, I believe, in all 3 of them. Did the ones? Is that accurate?
As Ted Karras pointed out, it was good for the offense to win the day. And he pointed that out at the end of one of his comments. And that's that goes to, and we could talk about individual performances, but Joe was calm the whole time during this. And it's not like he was involved in the mix. Obviously, you don't want that to happen anyways, but it's not like he was trash talking. Very calm, cerebral. Okay. All right. And well, he made them pay a bit.
Yeah. And it was a good day for Joe Burrow. We can talk about why it was a good day for Joe Burrow. It was a good day for Tee Higgins as well. And he really stood out. He stood out when he's been on the field really throughout. I would say he's been performing really well in this training camp. We'll talk about what those guys did that was so impressive coming up next.
When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. And that's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board. It helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else who some are out there, that perfect fit might not actively be looking for a new job, but they're open to that perfect role. And that's why you got to get to LinkedIn, because over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. If you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional with LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. You should too. And you can post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
Let's talk individual standouts in this practice that favored the offense, but I do have some notes on some defensive players that stood out for the right reasons today as well. You talked about a couple of the plays that led to some of the little scuffles. Those were football plays, and those were good plays from the defense that occurred on these series where the offense ultimately prevailed. But Joe Burrow today, to me, the thing that really stood out today and led me to reflect on what I've seen from him throughout my time down here in Cincinnati, James, is that he's moving really well. He's managing the pocket really well. And we've talked about that, he looks like he's managed his explosiveness well. And like he's worked on his explosiveness. He's talked about that. But it shows up in terms of managing the pocket as well. And this is something we're used to from Joe Burrow. We're not used to seeing in training camp because Joe Burrow hasn't participated to this level in training camps of the past for the Cincinnati Bengals. But it is very encouraging to see him understanding where pressure is coming from, stepping up, stepping around, and keeping his eyes downfield, finding his playmakers down the field. Today, most notably, Tee Higgins making a really nice play there outside of structure to T. And I believe there was one other one that I cannot recall in detail right now, and I know James would, so I set it up. But Burrow's movement and throwing when moving has been an impressive feature of his camp through the 5 practices I've seen.
The best play he had today was an incompletion. He rolled out, at least in my eyes. He, like you said, moved really well, rolled out to his right, evaded the pressure. This isn't one of those practice sacks that gets blown dead and they just let him keep playing on. No, this would not have been a sack. He evaded the pressure, and he hits Tanner Hudson right in the hands. And in the end zone, it would have been a touchdown. And instead, Hudson drops it. And I think Tanner, I saw him, he's pretty frustrated at himself. But it was a really, really nice play in 11 on 11. Do you remember the play now?
I do. I was standing behind it. I was watching this right in front of me. I actually recorded it. And Hudson, unfortunately, I stopped recording it before the ball popped out. It was one of those complete the catch through the ground, like survive contact with the ground things. Like he caught it, and then he hit the ground, and then the ball popped out. And so probably would have been an incomplete pass because you got to survive contact with the ground. And that was a really nice play. I was focused on another player, and then eventually came back, and that was right in front of me.
It was nasty Joe Burrow, where it's like, oh, this isn't here, this isn't here, this isn't here. All right, I'm going to move over here. Oh, here's the rush. I'm going to step out. Now I'm going to roll out. Oh, and now I'm going to throw a rope to Tanner Hudson in the middle of the end zone where Logan Wilson and 3 other Bengals defenders were, at least 2 other Bengals defenders in between them for the touchdown. And it was this close to happening. So that play stood out. And that takes arm too. It's not just his movement ability. The arm, I felt like it was there today. There was a deep ball to Tee Higgins that you guys will probably see. I think Joe would want that one back, actually, because he let him into the middle of the field.
Just a bit.
Would have been right into Jordan Battle, who was in, and you don't want that. And so T wouldn't have scored. He would have gotten blown up. I think he would have probably held onto the ball. It would have been close. But, it's other than that throw, I think he threw the ball really, really well. After the Ted Karras scuffle, so after that first scuffle, well, there's a couple he was involved in, but the Logan Ted scuffle, a few plays later, Burrow found Kendrick Pryor for probably the catch of the practice in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. He gets his feet down, jumps, climbed the ladder. It was a perfect pass because only Kendrick could get to it. And it was against Cam Taylor-Britt. And so don't read too much into that. Obviously, corners get beat, but it was a hell of a ball by Joe Burrow and a great play by Kendrick Pryor in the back of the end zone.
Great moment for Kendrick Pryor, too, working with the ones as he has at times. He's rotated in with the ones. That's certainly the biggest play he's made in this training camp, and doing it against Cam Taylor-Britt is noteworthy. It will lead to more opportunities, surely, for Kendrick Pryor throughout the rest of this preseason process, and that was a nice play for him. I'm partial to the ball Joe Burrow threw to Tee Higgins across his body. This is another one on the move where he steps up to get around a rushing Miles Murphy and comes back to T on a crosser late and hits him in stride for a first down, I believe. That was a really nice play for Joe as well. He had a couple of good ones today and generally looked to be very accurate, looked like he was processing pretty well. Generally, the protection to me, I would say, was a little bit back and forth. And that's where we can talk about some of the wins on the defensive side of the ball. I have notes on, I think, 4 different Bengals defensive linemen that had individual wins today that I noticed in team periods that were impressive. All those guys on rookie contracts. So we can talk about those, but
you mean defensive lineman?
Did I say offensive lineman? I did mean defensive lineman. Go ahead.
Real quick, before we do that, because I know you want to talk trenches.
I wanted to talk about T.
Okay, good. Yeah, we're going there too. I want to talk about T too, because man, it's T time.
He was great.
Woo!
He's been great throughout this training camp.
But today was like, I don't need to see him Saturday.
No.
Like I'm fine. Like I get it, first team player offense. All I don't really know what else he has to show. Today was a physical practice. He was making plays, dove in the middle of the field for a first down where Burrow was off platform, made a throw. T went down, got it, didn't hesitate or anything like that. Like maybe he'll play a series with Burrow, but he was awesome today.
Yeah, I think the reason you play him is
just so you can run your offense.
To put him with Burrow. Yeah, because it does look different when T's not out there. I mean, not to take anything away from the other receivers that we've talked about quite a bit, like the Kendrick Pryor touchdown. I don't think T was on the field for that one, but Joe Burrow is very comfortable throwing to Tee Higgins. Dan Pitcher acknowledged after practice today when he spoke with the media that T caught every target he had in team period today, and I believe that is true. One of them was a check from Joe Burrow into a double slant. Tee Higgins caught that one for a first down. I think most of his catches were for first downs today, if not all of them. So really good practice for T. There were at least 5, if not 6 catches for him, including the deep ball, including that crosser, including a comeback, including the slant, and some of them in clutch moments. The guy looks really good to me. He's moving great, still as reliable as ever, and it looks like he's ready to have a big season in his contract year.
He's going to be awful. If you're in a fantasy league with me, don't draft him.
That's right.
There we go. That's my message. Now, if you're not in a fantasy league with me, maybe with Jake or someone else, I would probably target Tee Higgins because he looks like a 1 to me.
He looks great.
You notice his presence. To Jake's point, like we've talked about Charlie Jones and Andre Yosefach and Trenton Irwin and, obviously Jermaine Burton's in the mix and all these guys. T's on another level. And obviously we know Jamar's on another level, but T's on another level. It's very, very clear. In this offense, if it's going to take another step, you want T to play like a 1. And you want to go into every week having 2 1s and Joe Burrow. Because if you have that, you're a nightmare for opposing defenses. And Tee Higgins looks the part right now. And not only does he look it, it's translating on the field during team drills when he is out there.
One of my one of the enjoyable moments of Ted Karras talking about how the offense won today is he made sure he quipped, and that's without Uno out there. Just reminding the Bengals defense, like, hey, look, we can do this stuff with some guys that on it. I mean, not to call them out for that, but some of the guys making plays with the 1s are not going to make the team. And so a good day for the offense, certainly. But I do want to shout out a few of the young defenders on this team that stepped up and made some individual plays as well. The tricky thing about these move the ball drills when they're not live is obviously you're never hitting the quarterback, but also in running plays, like I don't understand the purpose of running the ball in these. Like I do, but also they're blowing it dead when a guy gets tagged. And there were a few plays near the goal line that probably would have been touchdowns in live action and real tackling because the running backs probably are able to drag guys or fall forward. And instead, as soon as the 2-hand tag is applied, that they blow it dead. Sometimes prematurely, in my opinion. But
for our audio listeners, Jake just tagged me. I want to make it very, very clear. If we were doing this drill, he would not be able to tag me. Keep going.
We'll get to those defensive standouts and some of the veterans that returned to the practice field for the Cincinnati Bengals on Wednesday coming up next.
Today's show is brought to you by Gametime. Gametime is the app that you need. So maybe you are playing a little 2-hand touch football and then you decide, I want to go to Great American Ballpark. Because you're at the Banks, you had a couple cold ones at Holy Grail, and you're like, I want to go to GABP and watch the Reds and watch Ellie De La Cruz, who is freaking awesome. Well, you can do that with Gametime. Gametime has last-minute deals, all-in prices, so you know exactly the amount that you're paying, and a panoramic view from your seat. So you're going to know exactly what the view looks like, whether it's at GABP, whether it's here as we're recording at Paycor Stadium, or any live event across the country. Gametime is going to have you covered. So do not delay. Download the app and know that your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. Get the Gametime app, whether it's Major League Baseball, NFL, or any live event, by downloading the app, creating an account, and using code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed.
Some trench notes here, James, and some defensive notes as well. Josh Newton had a near pick today. He continues to have a no,
he did.
Oh,
just a bad decision by Jake Brown.
It was a really bad ball.
Josh Newton was all over Charlie Jones, forced him to the sideline, was basically like in on him, and he just threw it right to Josh Newton. Josh should have picked it, actually.
He should have.
I don't know why he didn't, but he's been good. Really good coverage.
And along those lines, before we get to these trench guys that I have notes on, and any other notes that you have, Dejon Anthony and Newton both continue to work in a dime package with the ones. This could be something they're just doing for the preseason. This could be something that they're working on for the future in the regular season. Anthony seems to be working with the twos predominantly. Tyson Anderson did mix in with the twos as well, but Anthony working in with the ones. It seems like one of his roles, or perhaps the role they have in mind for him, is the tight end specialist that we've seen Dax kind of have that role in the past. We saw that a little bit on Wednesday, and we'll keep an eye on that throughout the preseason. But for all of the Bengals young trench players on rookie contracts, and I have notes across the line of scrimmage for each of them, there was at least one play that stood out to me. I think Joseph Osai continues to give Orlando Brown a hard time. And I'm probably a broken record saying this at this point. I feel like every single practice, Joseph Osai has had at least one significant play, one play that could have been a sack. Today, no exception. He could have had a sack on that deep ball to Tee Higgins. It certainly is very bang, bang when you go look at the video. I think Myles Murphy potentially either drew a hold or could have had a sack on another play that eventually led to Joe Burrow being off his spot and overthrowing, I believe, Shedrick Jackson on that play. So a nice rush there for Myles Murphy. I had Chris Jenkins working with the ones today with a late second effort, kind of second phase pass rush win against Alex Kappa, a spin move that could have led to a QB hit or potentially a sack, depending on the timing of things. And I even had Zach Carter today with a tackle for loss working with the one. So 4 Bengals players on the defensive line on rookie contracts, each of whom had at least one splash play that I noticed on Wednesday.
Can't wait to see the comments about panic about the Bengals offensive line.
Yeah. Well,
that's what happens. It's funny when like
you point out a positive, there's a negative on the other side.
No doubt.
It's the same team.
Like Josh Newton. Oh, how did he cover up Charlie Jones?
Yeah.
Put the clamps on, and you could go all day long. The Kendrick Pryor one is going to be the one, by the way. That's going to be the one that gets the people. Oh, yeah. Oh, my God, this secondary, which may be true. Who knows? Maybe the secondary stinks, but I'm not panicking yet. But I think Myles has certainly won his fair share recently. And
today it wasn't against Orlando or Amarius Mims. I think that was working against the tight end today, just in case you're wondering who he was working against, just to throw that out there.
No, but just like the past 4 or 5 practices, I've noticed Myles Murphy more and more. And he's getting settled. Did you mention Trey Hendrickson back? By the way,
some veterans returned to practice today.
Yeah, Trey Hendrickson was back today. Didn't do team. Yeah, didn't do team, but he was out there, which is great to see. And Myles Murphy getting valuable reps. I think he looks good. And you mix in Osai too. Hopefully those guys continue. They'll play a ton. They'll play a decent amount on Saturday. So hopefully those guys continue to grow, because the Bengals are banking on them, especially without Cam Sample, who real quick did undergo successful surgery on his torn Achilles. He tweeted about it, thanked fans for supporting him, and the Bengals made that move. I'll just announce the moves real quick. They placed him on injured reserve. He's out for the year. They waived Austin McNamara and Trey Mosley, punter and wide receiver. And then they signed Andre Carter, an undrafted defensive end out of Indiana, and also Josh Pryor, the defensive tackle, college free agent signee with the Commanders last year, played in 7 games for the Commanders. So 2 defensive linemen to boost that Marion Hobby-led unit with all of these injuries that we've seen. And then we also have the Jackson update. Did you see this yet?
McKinley Jackson had a knee brace on in the locker room after practice, spoke with at least multiple.
Spoke with a bunch of, basically he called it minor. We'll see. We'll hear from Zach on Thursday. Players usually downplay injuries, but it didn't seem super serious, which is good news. We'll see how long he's out, though.
In his place today in practice was largely Travis Bell. They're really thin on the defensive line. There are a couple new numbers out there. That must be the Carter and Pryor, the new signees. 47 and 46 were new numbers today, I noticed, with the defensive line. So if you see those guys on Saturday, hopefully they'll have names on their jerseys, so we'll know who they are. They don't have names on their jerseys in practice, but that answers that mystery. Carter, one of the I think a 6-year senior transfer this year in his last year in college to Indiana. Previously was with, I think, Western Michigan. Had a good year as a run stopper in the Big Ten, a defensive edge player. So probably we'll see him getting plenty of work. I don't think you want to get Myles Murphy too much work. He should be out there a little bit. He needs a little bit of work in the preseason, getting some work against an opposing team, live work, all welcome. Same for Joseph Osai. We'll see how much we see of BJ Hill. Sheldon Rankins was also back at practice. I didn't see him in team. That was still Zach Carter with the ones. Mike Gesicki was back at practice. Don't recall seeing him in any 11-on-11 work. Trent Brown continuing to practice. Again, didn't see him in 11-on-11 work. Marius Mims continues to work with the ones. I think Devin Cochran was the right tackle with the twos today. And Geno Stone was also back at practice, and he did at least most of the work in 11-on-11. At times he did go out for Jordan Battle with the ones, and that was the substitution that we saw there. But good news for those veterans getting back to practice, especially for Trey Hendrickson, seeing him just doing anything after we haven't seen him for a while, and knowing how instrumental he is to the defense. A certainly encouraging sign that he'll be more than ready to go by the time the season rolls around, because that's still a few weeks away.
Yeah. Yep. It's he's good. I think Sam Hubbard is making progress as well. I don't think there's really much concern about either guy long-term, which is nice.
Yeah. Not a ton of concern.
Nope. And so other note, the punter battle, as I mentioned with McNamara, is one short, and kind of called it. This is why you should listen to Locked On Bengals, hopefully, is we'll kind of give you the mindset. And I didn't talk to anyone either. You just kind of read the tea leaves, and I've been able to confirm it since. It was a battle between McNamara and Rakow, and they were never planning on going into preseason with three punters. And so Rakow, they brought him in late, and he's impressed them. He beats out McNamara. All right, now it's Brad Robbins, Ryan Rakow, both guys averaging really high averages right now on their punts that the team tracks. And so it's going to come down to the preseason games. It is. And that for Rakow includes holding. Robbins is certainly comfortable with Evan McPherson and vice versa when it comes to holding. So Rakow has to show that. But I think this is firmly a competition now, which I know a lot of people want. Number 8, by the way, is Ryan Rakow. So when you look and you see him on your screen on Saturday, you'll know who he is.
Yeah, and probably should expect both of those guys to punt. Zach Taylor previously was a little bit coy about it, I think, because there was the anticipation that one of the punters might not make it to the game, knowing what was going on with their defensive line depth. They had another injury since then. They bring some guys in to help there because they just are a little short on bodies to get through these preseason games, if nothing else. And you need to have that depth throughout camp. The couple other notes for me, Matt Lee getting his first work in 11-on-11s, the rookie center, working with the second team on their last move the ball drive of the day. He was in with a number of other substitutions. So realistically, probably still third team, but he did get some work in 11-on-11s for the first time that I can recall seeing in the 5 practices I've been down here for at this point. He's likely to play a lot this weekend.
Yeah, you get him into some football shape before Saturday.
And just comfortability running the plays. He not getting any, we were talking about this the other day when we were driving back. The idea of playing in a preseason game, and some players are about to do this. They're about to play live football after not even having really played much in 11-on-11. And maybe that changes tomorrow. Maybe in their final practice before the preseason game, they give those depth guys a little bit more time to just have run some plays in a non-walkthrough setting, in a non-individual setting, in a non-on-air setting. But I don't envy that task. Good to see Matt Lee out there, though, and would expect him to get a lot of work on Saturday.
No doubt. Backup offensive line up for grabs. There's a lot of jobs up for grabs. We'll be able to hit on some of those things coming up on tomorrow's show. We also have another practice.
Yes.
Just a quick schedule note. We will do our show that normally drops on Sunday. We will react to the game Saturday night. So you guys will get that episode, and then we will record again on Monday after we have more to react to. But that instant reaction to games, that is coming after Saturday night's game like normal.
Our first preseason game of the year. We got to get back into game shape ourselves. And we'll get back into that game shape coming up on Saturday. My last notes of this practice, James. Really good day for Zach Moss as the receiver. caught a touchdown pass in that move the ball drill, caught 3 passes down in that area of the field. So a nice day for Zach Moss. I know some people have been wondering what's going on with Zach Moss. Haven't called his name a ton. Part of that has to do with just the way the running game works, as I talked about earlier in these practices. I also thought Chris Evans had a nice day with the number 2 offense. So those are my running back notes today. We'll see what happens there with those depth running backs, but just wanted to shout out Zach Moss for the touchdown reception in particular, but doing his job, and Dan Pitcher continuing to praise him for being in the right place all the time, knowing exactly where he needs to be and when. That's going to do it for this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. If you need a second listen today, check out the Locked On NFL 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube or on Amazon Fire TV. Until next time, thanks for listening to this episode of the Locked On Bengals podcast. Hoo day, and have a good one.